I'm Isabella Turner, 29 years old, living alone in a small apartment in Portland. Not spacious, not luxurious, but at least no one knocks on my door at 7 a.m., expecting me to cook breakfast for 6 wild kids running around like caffeinated squirrels. After 8 years of scraping by on an assistant marketing salary, I finally landed a full-time role at a reputable ad agency. My own desk, decent benefits, and, most importantly, a schedule I control. And yet, every time December rolls around, that tight feeling in my throat comes back. I was sitting in my usual coffee shop, halfway through writing copy for a beauty campaign, when my phone buzzed. 12 missed calls. All from my mother, Susan. I sighed and leaned back in my chair. The iced coffee had long gone watery, but I didn't bother ordering another. I knew what she wanted. Same as every year. Come home early, you need to help with the kids. Isabella, you're the only one who can manage them. You don't have kids, so what's wrong with helping your sister a little? When I was a child, Christmas was magical. Lights, gingerbread cookies, and carols playing from that old radio in the kitchen. But after I turned 15, everything changed. I was no longer the kid receiving presents. I became the default babysitter. At first it was for a few hours, then the whole afternoon, then New Year's Eve. By the time I was in college, my mom and sister treated my return home as a given, not to rest but to help. No one asked if I was tired. No one asked if I had plans. They just assigned me tasks. Like I was some pre-programmed nanny designed to smile and soothe tantrums over lost Wi-Fi. I'd tried to push back once. I was 24, and I said I wanted to spend Christmas in New York with friends. My mom was silent for 2 seconds, then sighed like I'd told her she had cancer. You don't really have friends, Isabella, she said flatly. Help your sister. You're their aunt. Don't you love them? That line, "You're their aunt," became the annual spell. I never escaped it. Until now. This year, I finally had a stable job. I wasn't an intern drowning in debt. I could pay rent, bought a used car, and even made plans to spend Christmas in the Colorado mountains with coworkers. A real holiday. No diapers, no screaming, no one asking if I knew how to warm a bottle. I tapped the phone screen. The missed calls still glared red. I didn't want to hear her voice. I was scared. Not because she'd yell, but because she knew how to make me feel guilty. She didn't need to shout. Just one line. You've changed. That was enough to make me drop everything. I slid my phone into my bag, trying to refocus on the draft. But memories crept back. Me at 19, scrubbing pee off the floor from my 4-year-old nephew while in the living room. My sister sipped wine and laughed with my mom and their friends. No one said thank you. No one even asked if I was hungry. I got used to being seen as the one who isn't busy. Because I wasn't married. Because I didn't have kids. Because I seemed available. But in reality, I was busy living. I was busy building a life where I didn't have to sacrifice myself for people who treated the word no as betrayal. The phone rang again. This time it was my sister Jessica. I stared at the screen, didn't answer. I unplugged my headphones and closed the laptop. Snow had started to fall. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. If I didn't protect my boundaries, no one would. This Christmas, I was choosing myself. 2 days later, I got a text from my mom. Isabella, Zoom call at 8 tonight, family meeting to plan Christmas. Just reading the message made my chest tighten. A meeting. Planning what? I had told her clearly last month that I'd be going to Colorado with friends for the holidays. She brushed it off like I was joking. But, at 8 p.m. sharp, I still turned on my computer, partly because I couldn't bring myself to let my grandparents sit through a family Zoom without me. On screen, most of the family was already there. My grandparents sat in the center, warm and sweet in matching red sweaters with snowmen on them. My sister Rachel sat with her husband Mark in their kitchen in Kansas. The chaos of 3 kids screaming in the background over a missing TV remote. My mom joined 1 minute late, lips painted a pale pink, her expression oddly cheerful. "You finally joined," she said, glancing at the clock like I was late for kindergarten. "This'll be quick. Everyone's already agreed." I raised an eyebrow. "Agreed on what, Mom?" Rachel burst out laughing, her voice almost gleeful. "The Bahamas trip." I stayed silent. Mark chimed in. "We booked a 7-day, 6-night package. Leaving the 23rd through the 29th. There's a buffet on the cruise ship, a spa, even sunrise yoga on the deck. It'll be amazing with the whole family." I turned to look at my mom. She smiled sweetly, like honey laced with vinegar. "Your grandparents are going, your dad and I. Rachel and Mark too. Everyone needs a real break after this past year. The issue is, the kids can't go. Cruise rules say children under 10 need a dedicated guardian, and Rachel doesn't want to miss this." My heart started pounding. "So," my mom continued, "we figured you'd stay and watch the little ones. Rachel set everything up. You just need to be in Kansas before the 23rd. You'll have your own room, meals prepped, a full schedule for the kids." I let out a laugh. I couldn't believe this. "Mom," I said slowly, "I already told you. I'm going to Colorado. I booked my plane ticket, reserved a cabin with friends, made plans, back in October. You all know that." Rachel blinked. "You can go to Colorado another time. Christmas only comes once a year." I looked at the screen, at every face staring back, expecting me to nod like it was a given. Did no one think to ask me? Did it not occur to anyone that I might have plans, a life of my own? Mom tilted her head. "Isabella, you've never said no before. You've always been the one who puts family first. That's why we trust you." "No," I said, my voice hoarse with anger. "That's not trust. That's taking advantage." Mark gave an awkward chuckle. "Okay, now you're being dramatic." "No," I repeated, "this isn't the first time. Last year I canceled my Seattle trip because Rachel had a cold. The year before that, I rang in the new year with 2 crying toddlers, while the rest of you partied at a resort." No one answered, just faint Christmas music from the kitchen in the background. "This time, I'm not doing it," I said. "I'm not changing my plans, because you made yours without asking me." My mom took a long breath, then lowered her voice like I was 5 years old. "Isabella, you're being selfish." I stared straight into the camera. "No, selfish is assigning someone a responsibility they didn't agree to. Selfish is planning a vacation and assuming someone else will pick up the slack." "Enough," Rachel snapped, eyes glassy. "The kids love their aunt. You can't abandon them for some pointless trip." I pressed my lips together, holding back what I really wanted to say. If I opened my mouth, I'd say something I couldn't take back. Instead, I turned off the camera. Before I left the call, I said one last thing. "Don't guilt me for refusing to go along with a plan made behind my back. I'm not your live-in babysitter. And this Christmas, I'm choosing myself." The screen went black. I shut my laptop, hand still trembling. No applause. No fireworks. Just snow, falling heavier outside the window. I woke up at 7 a.m. on December 21st with a strange feeling. Part calm, part on edge. I had made it clear during the Zoom call that I wouldn't sacrifice another Christmas. But the night before, I received a text from my mom. "Isabella, your grandparents are really hoping to see you tomorrow morning. Just stop by for a bit. The kids miss you too." I hesitated. But I missed my grandparents too. And I still wanted to bring gifts for the kids. Not out of duty, but because I used to be the lonely child in that house. And I didn't want them to feel the way I once did. I drove through a light layer of snow covering the quiet streets of suburban Wichita. My parents' 2-story house looked strangely still. No twinkling lights. No Christmas music from the living room like every year. I rang the doorbell. No answer. But the door was unlocked. I stepped inside and called out, "I'm here." No reply. Just the sound of little footsteps on the hardwood floor. A nearby door swung open. Max, my 10-year-old nephew, ran up and hugged my legs, followed by 7-year-old Chloe and 4-year-old Emily, their eyes lighting up. "Aunt Bella!" all three shouted in unison, and I forced a smile. "Hey, sweethearts," I whispered. "Where are your grandparents?" "They went on a trip," Max said casually. "Mom said you're watching us for a few days." I froze. "Went? Where?" "Florida," Chloe cheered. "Mom said she'll FaceTime us every night." I slowly set the gift bag down. In the living room, breakfast had already been laid out. Cereal, milk, toast. On the table sat an envelope labeled, "For Isabella. Thank you for sacrificing for the family." I opened it. Inside was a neatly typed schedule, each line printed in cold uniform font. 7:30 IMF Emily her cough medicine in fridge, yellow label. 9 o'clock, turn on English learning show for Max. 7:30 no beans. Make lunch for Chloe, no beans. 2 o'clock p.m. nap time for all. 5 o'clock, reheat chicken soup in freezer. 7 o'clock bath time. 6:30 story time and bed. Receipt contacts, pediatrician, and trusted neighbor numbers on fridge. At the bottom, in red handwritten ink. "You're the only one we can count on. Help your sister like always. Love, Mom." I stood still. No grandparents, no parents, no one else. They had planned this, left the kids, and tricked me into coming by dangling the idea of family. I stepped into the kitchen. The fridge was packed, every container labeled by day. They had prepared everything, like they were sure I'd show up. My phone buzzed. A message from Rachel. "Thank you, Bella. I knew you'd never leave the kids alone. Merry Christmas." I gripped my phone tightly. What if I hadn't come? Would they have really left these kids alone? Or had they just gambled on the idea that I'd never say no? I didn't know what made me angrier. The outright deception? Or their smug confidence that I'd just go along with it, like always? Emily tugged at my shirt. "Auntie, can you read us a story?" I knelt down and nodded gently. "Yes. But first, I need to make a phone call." I walked back into the kitchen, locked the door, pulled out my phone and dialed. My hands trembled. Part rage, part heartbreak that, once again, my Christmas had been stolen. After 2 rings, the line picked up. My mom's voice was cheerful, like she was lounging on a Miami beach. "Isabella, you made it. Are the kids okay?" "Not okay," I said, voice steady and cold. "What did you and Rachel just pull?" "I knew you'd come, I believe in you. You're always the one who puts family first." "No. You believe I'm too kind to say no. You didn't think I'd react. But this time is different. Don't make a big deal out of this, Isabella. I'm taking care of 3 minors while every adult in this family flew off without giving official notice. That's child abandonment. You know that's a crime in the state of Kansas, right?" The other end went silent. I continued. "You have 1 hour to come back. If not, I'm calling child services and the police." "You wouldn't actually do that." "I'm completely serious." I hung up, my heart raced, hands clenched. I didn't know if they'd really come back. But for the first time, I knew I was reclaiming control. I was no longer the obedient puppet they could guilt into anything with a few words about family. I returned to the living room, smiling at the 3 kids waiting for me, with a Christmas story book. "How about one story before we play a word game?" "Yeah!" they shouted in unison, unaware that I had just declared a quiet war. Not against them, but to finally save myself. I checked the clock. 8:46. I had given Mom 1 hour. That meant they had 14 minutes left. In the meantime, I tried to stay calm by tidying up the perfectly prepared kitchen. Everything was clean and arranged, to the point of being emotionless, like the house was a stage, and I, an uninvited audience member, had been forced into a role I never agreed to play. The kids were playing in the living room. Emily was stacking blocks by the Christmas tree. Chloe was reading on the sofa. Max was sprawled out on the rug, glued to his iPad, oblivious to the fact that no adult over 30 was within a 200-mile radius. I took out my phone and photographed everything. The absence of adults, the notes on the table, the unsupervised children. Then I filmed the entire house. Date and time clearly visible on screen. Not because I wanted to take things too far. But this time, I wasn't giving them a chance to deny or twist the truth like every other year. 9:01. No calls, no texts. I didn't say anything to the kids. I just went upstairs to the guest room, which Rachel usually used as her home office. The door was unlocked. Her laptop, printer, and mini fax machine were still on the desk. There was even a file cabinet. I turned on the laptop. No password. I opened Rachel's email, ignoring personal stuff, and searched for flight details. Just as I suspected, plane tickets to Miami, dated December 25, 6:35 a.m. That meant by the time I had woken up, they were already comfortably seated on the plane. There was also a car rental agreement on the desk, under my dad's name. George Turner, confirming pickup at Miami International Airport at 9:15 a.m. They didn't just leave on impulse. They planned it in advance, down to the minute. That text last night? Just bait. I sat in the chair. My rage was no longer boiling. It had gone cold and quiet, like a slab of ice in my chest. I wasn't sad or shocked anymore. Just clear-eyed about something I had quietly known for years. I had never truly been part of this family. I was just convenient. I pulled out my phone and called the Kansas Child Protective Services hotline. A woman answered. Polite and efficient, I spoke clearly without stammering. My name is Isabella Turner. I'm currently at 1459 West Auburn Street in Wichita. There are 3 minors left alone in this house without supervision. Their parents left the state without designating any legal guardian. I did not agree to take care of them. I have evidence. She asked for details. I gave everything. Names, timestamps, flight number, photos, videos, booking confirmation emails. She listened carefully without judgment. Ms. Turner, we'll forward this case to a Wichita field officer. Someone will be in touch with you within 30 minutes. I hung up, still staring at the screen. No texts, no apology, no explanation. 9:18. Finally, the sound of a car outside. I peeked through the curtain. Not CPS. It was my father. I hurried to the door and flung it open before he could ring the bell. He wore a blue travel jacket, dark circles under his eyes, hair matted with sweat. Isabella, he panted, don't call the police, we can talk this out. I already did, I said, strangely calm. They're on their way. You can't do this is your family. That's exactly why, I cut him off. Because you're my family, I won't accept being tricked and treated like a free babysitter. I said no. You all ignored me. My mother ran from the car, her face pale. Sweetheart, calm down. We didn't think it would get this serious. No, I interrupted again. You just didn't want to think. You counted on my silence. But the kids, she tried. The kids are innocent, but I won't keep erasing myself just because someone throws out the phrase, for the kids. The back car door opened. Rachel stepped out, eyes red. She looked at me but said nothing. In her hand was her phone, probably showing a CPS alert. 15 minutes later, a silver SUV pulled up to the curb. 2 casually dressed officers stepped out, showed their IDs, and began asking questions. I provided all the evidence. My parents were stunned. Rachel was silent, her face turned ghost white when the officer said, leaving the state and abandoning minors without legal guardianship, even with relatives, can be considered a criminal offense in Kansas. I said nothing more, just stood there, gripping my coat, hollow inside. I didn't feel joy watching them panic. I didn't feel triumphant seeing them cornered. I just felt tired. I spent the rest of the morning in silence. After the child protection officers left, my entire family quietly packed their bags and returned the space they had invaded. Not by force, but by default. My mother avoided eye contact, and Rachel could only manage one sentence. "You really went too far." I didn't reply, I was too exhausted to argue. That afternoon, I returned to my apartment in Portland. Snow still dusted the rooftops, and inside was the quiet calm I had always longed for during the holidays. I made myself a bowl of chicken soup, turned on the heater, curled up with my old fleece blanket, and allowed myself to rest. No checking my phone, no replying to messages, no explaining. But the silence didn't last. The next day around noon, I got a call from my best friend, Olivia. "Have you seen your mom's post?" I sat up, heart pounding. "What post?" "Oh, on Facebook. I'll send you the link." I opened my phone, hands beginning to shake, as I read the long status posted by my mother, Susan Turner. Christmas is a time for love and togetherness, but not everyone understands that. Even after we tried to plan a beautiful family vacation, we were betrayed by someone we always trusted. The kids cried all day. It's heartbreaking how selfishness can ruin a cherished tradition. Below was a photo of the 3 children looking glum in the living room, captioned, "Always love our children, even when others don't understand the value of family." The picture was from the house in Wichita. I recognized the red pillow behind Max. I had bought it last year. I froze. Not a single line mentioned how I was tricked. Not a word about them leaving the state without consent. They twisted the entire situation, painting me as the villain. The comments started rolling in. "Ungrateful daughters these days. Stay strong, Susan, you did the right thing." It's sad how people abandon family values for so-called freedom. It was just one trip, she couldn't watch the kids for a few days? My chest ached. Not because of the judgment, but because I had been right. They weren't sorry. They were just annoyed they got exposed. I opened my laptop, logged into Facebook. Typed, deleted, typed again, deleted again. Until I finally wrote exactly what needed to be said. Not angry, not defensive. Just the truth. My name is Isabella Turner. Yesterday, I was called to my sister's house to drop off Christmas presents for my nieces and nephew. When I arrived, I discovered that the entire family, my parents, sister, and brother-in-law, had left the state and abandoned 3 minor children without a legal guardian. They had planned everything in advance, meals, schedule, without asking me. I did not agree to babysit. They just assumed I was too kind to say no. When I threatened to report it to Child Services, they rushed back. Today, I found out my mother posted a misleading Facebook post to distort the facts. I will not stay silent. Here is photo evidence of the flight schedule, the handwritten note, and the instructions left behind. I don't want anyone to feel they have to choose between honesty and loyalty. Family isn't the only place to find love. A true family's built on mutual respect, not obligation. I'm not posting this out of revenge. I'm posting to reclaim my voice. I hit p. At first, there were just a few likes. Then Olivia shared it. Then a few old college friends. Within 3 hours, the post had over 2,000 shares. I started getting messages from strangers. "Your story is exactly what happened to me 10 years ago. Thank you for speaking what so many of us are afraid to. You're not selfish. You're protecting yourself." I sat in front of my screen, reading each line. The loneliness inside me softened. That evening, I got a message from my grandfather. "Can you call me, sweetheart?" I called right away. His voice was warm and steady. "I saw everything. I believe you. And I think it's time the adults in this family apologized." I didn't say anything. I just listened. And, for the first time in years, I didn't feel wrong for speaking up. Then my phone buzzed again, a notification. My mother had just posted a new status. I tapped it. The headline read, "A public apology from a mother who went too far." My phone rang at 7 a.m. the next morning. It was my grandmother. Barbara, 73, a retired elementary school teacher, and the only one in my family who listened instead of judged. "Isabella," she said, her voice calm but firm. "This is no longer a family misunderstanding. This is prolonged abuse of your trust. And now that they've begun smearing you publicly, I think you need to protect yourself legally." I stayed silent, not interrupting. She had never pushed me to take drastic action. But this time, her tone was resolute. "Your grandfather and I are on your side. We're not letting this pass like before." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "Yes, Grandma, I understand." Less than 2 hours later, I found a law firm in Portland that specialized in defamation and harassment within families. I told the whole story to the attorney. Her name was Claire Donnelly, around 40. Sharp, calm-spoken, and appropriately empathetic. When I handed over screenshots of social media posts, the comments from my mom, Rachel, even my dad, who wrote that I was mentally unstable and just seeking attention, Claire frowned. "Miss Turner, this goes far beyond a family dispute," she said. "This is emotional harassment, and the public statements may legally qualify as defamation. You have solid grounds to issue a cease and desist letter and to go further if necessary." I asked, "Do you think I should sue?" Claire tilted her head slightly. "The first step is a formal warning letter. If they persist, I'll help you file a lawsuit." We started that same day. Claire drafted a clear letter outlining the specific actions of my mom, dad, and sister, demanding they take down the defamatory posts and issue a public apology within 72 hours. If not, we'd proceed with legal action. I didn't want things to escalate. But I also couldn't continue allowing myself to be humiliated just because I refused to stay silent. 3 days later, instead of apologizing, my mother posted a new status. "It's heartbreaking when your own flesh and blood chooses to threaten the family with lawyers. We just wanted to protect the kids and preserve a cherished Christmas tradition, and now we're accused of abandonment and abuse. I truly don't understand what this generation thinks family means anymore." Below were the usual comments. "Kids these days are so ungrateful." The HG Drylon Susan. "You did the right thing. So sad to see people choosing lawsuits over loyalty. Can't even watch your niece and nephew for a holiday trip?" This time, Rachel shared the post too, adding, "Everyone has limits, even family." I didn't feel shocked anymore. I felt sorry. Sorry for a family so determined to preserve their perfect image, they trampled one of their own to keep it intact. Claire immediately sent a second letter. This time a final notice, warning that if the attacks continued, we would file a formal defamation and harassment lawsuit. It didn't stop there. My dad, who had previously kept a neutral stance, suddenly posted a short video. He sat in their backyard, looking somber, saying, "My daughter has been influenced by outsiders and is losing her loving heart." The video quickly spread on Facebook, TikTok, and even got shared by several large accounts with captions like, "When the younger generation forgets what parents sacrificed." I started receiving floods of messages. Some threatening, most condemning. Strangers sent anonymous emails, calling me a thankless monster, and saying I was the kind of person who'll die alone. I couldn't focus at work. Every time I opened my phone, another wave of negativity hit me. I locked down my Facebook, hid all personal info, and even filed for temporary leave at work due to mental health stress. I called my grandfather. "You did the right thing," he said gently. "Don't let so-called family reputation overshadow the truth. If they're building a wall of lies, you have the right to tear it down." I cried. Not from weakness, but from the relief of knowing at least someone still believed me. 3 days later, Claire filed the official lawsuit. We submitted it to the local court. Clear allegations, solid evidence, a list of defamatory statements, timestamps, and screenshots of how far they spread. I knew there was no turning back after this step. My family had chosen to attack instead of talk, and I, Isabella Turner, had chosen to defend myself, even if it meant facing hatred from people who once called me daughter, little sister, Aunt Bella. The real battle had only just begun. The first court hearing took place in mid-March at the Sedgwick County Courthouse in Kansas. That day was bitterly cold with patches of melting snow along the curbs. I wore a charcoal gray long coat and sat silently in the waiting room beside my attorney, Claire Donnelly. Across the room, my parents and Rachel sat in a row, their faces stiff like stone. No one looked at me, and I made no attempt to engage. I was no longer seeking reconciliation. I was here to reclaim the truth. Their attorney, a silver-haired middle-aged man named Walter Burns, opened with a highly emotional speech about a family torn apart by misunderstandings, and the sorrow of parents being taken to court by their own daughter over a few Facebook posts. He called it a modern social tragedy. Claire didn't react. She let him speak, then calmly stood and presented over 300 pages of documentation. Screenshots, texts, videos, emails, and public posts from my mom, dad, and Rachel. Every word, every timestamp laid bare. She opened her laptop and played the video my dad had posted, him sitting in the garden, lamenting that I had been influenced by outsiders and had forgotten filial piety. Background music had been added, making it feel more like a manipulative propaganda piece than a heartfelt message. Claire looked directly at the judge. Your Honor, these actions are no longer within the realm of private family disputes. This is a deliberate smear campaign, made public, and has caused serious damage to my client's mental health, reputation, and social well-being. We're not seeking revenge, we are seeking justice. For the entire 4-hour hearing, I remained silent. Only when the judge invited me to speak did I rise. My voice was steady, not shaky. I used to think that if I stayed quiet things would settle on their own, but my silence was mistaken for consent. I don't regret speaking out, even if it costs me permanent estrangement from my own blood relatives. When I finished, the courtroom fell silent. Rachel lowered her head. My mother turned away slightly, as if she couldn't bear to face the reflection of her own actions in my words. 3 weeks later, the court issued its verdict. The judge found that the actions of Susan Turner, George Turner, and Rachel Howard constituted a pattern of harassment, defamation of personal character, and prolonged emotional harm. 3 rulings were made. A 2-year no-contact order prohibiting any direct, indirect, or social media-based communication with me in any form. Compensation for emotional distress, totaling $75,000, covering therapy costs, lost income due to work leave, and legal expenses. A mandatory takedown of all defamatory content, and the requirement to post a written public apology within 14 days, to remain visible for a minimum of 6 months, on the platforms where false claims had been published. No one from their side objected in court. They knew they had lost. Not because I was more powerful, but because they were too confident that I would always stay silent. I left the courthouse in silence. On the way home, Claire said to me, "Not everyone has the courage to sue the very people who raised them, but not everyone has the right to destroy their child under the title of parent." 7 days later, my mother posted her apology on Facebook, cold, brief, emotionless. Rachel sent a private email apology, blaming pressure and a lapse in judgment. My father said nothing. But the consequences didn't stop there. My father, once a regional director at a logistics company, was asked to take early retirement after his video went viral on LinkedIn and was deemed inconsistent with corporate ethical standards. My mother, previously an active member of the PTA and local charity boards, was removed from her board position after the community demanded answers regarding her use of social media to attack her daughter. Rachel and her husband, owners of a small family-run bakery, faced a wave of backlash. A local blog covering my lawsuit gained traction, and their customer base vanished. Within 4 months, they were forced to sell the shop at nearly a 40% loss. My family, once proudly held up as a model household in the community, now lived quietly and out of the spotlight. The travel posts, photos of matching outfits for the grandkids, moral lectures, all vanished from social media. What remained was a heavy silence. I didn't rejoice in what they lost, but I knew that if I hadn't stood up, everything would have repeated itself, year after year. An endless cycle of manipulation and lies, disguised by the word family. I cut all contact with my parents and Rachel right after the trial. No texts, no calls. The no contact order was initially set for 2 years, but for me, it marked the beginning of something deeper. A decision never to let them back into my life again. Ever. I stayed in touch with my grandparents. Every Sunday I'd video call Grandma Barbara to hear her stories about her years as an elementary school teacher. Grandpa Frank would often send handwritten letters, his shaky handwriting warm and steady, always ending with the same line. "You did the right thing, Isabella." As for the kids, Max, Chloe, and Emily, I kept in touch indirectly through my grandparents. I didn't want them to have to take sides, or be dragged into the mess adults created. But I always told Grandma, if the kids ever need me, I'll be here. Then the years went by. I transferred to a new job in Seattle and took on a creative lead position at a major media firm. Every morning I had my coffee at the usual cafe near work, clocked in on time, and no longer flinched at the sound of my phone ringing from people who used to treat me like the family's on-call babysitter. People called me by my name. Isabella Turner, not "Mommy's good girl," or the youngest who should be more understanding. 3 years after the trial, I met David. A soft-spoken architect from Oregon, 2 years older than me, with a kind smile and eyes that never saw me as an obligation. We started with simple dates, pizza on the balcony, walks in the park, reading sci. I didn't share my whole story right away, but when I did mention that I'd once had to choose between truth and family, he gently held my hand and said, "You chose right, not everyone is brave enough to do that." At 34, I got married. It was a small, cozy wedding, just close friends, my grandparents, and a few colleagues. No one from my parents' side was invited. And we didn't need them. 9 months later, I gave birth to our first daughter, Sophie. In the quiet hospital room on an early autumn morning, holding her in my arms, I made a silent promise. I'll never let anyone use the word family to hurt you. When Sophie turned 3, I started a blog about surviving toxic family dynamics. I didn't name anyone or go into legal details, but I wrote about the feeling of being used as a tool. About the emotional tug-of-war between staying silent and seeking justice. The blog went viral. Many reached out, mostly middle-aged women, sharing similar stories. Being manipulated by their parents, treated as backup, labeled as ungrateful, simply for wanting to live life their own way. I wasn't alone anymore, and I knew I had done the right thing. Not just for myself, but for those learning how to break free from the trap disguised as familial love. When Max turned 18, he contacted me via email. His first line was, "Aunt Bella, I'm sorry. I didn't know what the adults did to you." I sat in front of my screen for a long time before replying with one sentence. "You kids were never to blame. I've always been here." A month later, Max came to Seattle. Now a tall young man studying psychology, he hugged me tightly outside my apartment. We spent the afternoon talking about childhood memories, what I'd been through, and about Sophie, the little girl I once feared would grow up in doubt and pain, but who instead became the light that guided me out of the dark. Soon after, Chloe and Emily reached out too. They didn't resent their parents. They just wanted the truth. And I told them. Not bitterly, not angrily, just with the honesty I never received from my own family. This year, I turned 38. I live in a small house in the suburbs of Seattle. I grow vegetables in the backyard, bake during the holidays, and take Sophie to her piano class with David every Wednesday afternoon. I still work in the creative field, but I no longer let others' validation define my worth. After everything, I've learned this. Not every blood tie makes a true family. Real family is where there's kindness, respect, and freedom. I was once left behind on Christmas Eve, without a second thought. But now, every Christmas, I'm the one who decides who gets to enter my home. And I choose love. But never again at the cost of myself. Isabella's story is proof that kindness doesn't mean you have to stay silent. When family becomes a source of harm instead of a place of comfort, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. Saying no, demanding truth and justice. These weren't just ways Isabella protected herself, but a powerful message to anyone who's ever been exploited in the name of love. You deserve respect, even if it means walking away alone. What do you think about Isabella's journey? What would you do if you were in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful, heartfelt stories about family and life.